What if the biggest story in America was suddenly replaced overnight? What if, just as people were demanding answers about one of the most disturbing scandals in modern history, the world's attention was pulled somewhere else? Because that's exactly what happened. The moment Donald Trump ordered strikes on Iran, everything changed. But the real question is, did the story really disappear, or was it just buried beneath something bigger? It started like any other breaking news cycle. Early in the morning, people across the United States woke up to alerts flashing on their phones. News channels cut into regular programming. The message was urgent. The United States had launched a military strike on Iran. Within minutes, global media shifted into crisis mode. Screens filled with maps, military analysts, and discussions about what might happen next. Words like escalation, retaliation, and conflict dominated the airwaves. For audiences in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, it felt like the world had suddenly become more dangerous. But beneath that global tension, something else was happening. Something quieter, but just as important. A story that had been building for years suddenly lost its place in the spotlight. Before the strike, America was already facing intense pressure. Immigration crackdowns had sparked widespread outrage. Videos and images of enforcement raids were circulating online, fueling anger and debate. At the same time, people were struggling with rising costs of living. Groceries were becoming more expensive. Rent was increasing. Healthcare bills were pushing families to their limits. For many, it wasn't just about money. It was about uncertainty. A growing fear that the system might not be working as it should. A feeling that something deeper was wrong. And then there was the story that refused to go away. The name that kept returning to headlines, conversations, and social media feeds was Jeffrey Epstein. This was not just another criminal case. It had become something much larger. It was a story about power, influence, and connections at the highest levels of society. Epstein had moved in elite circles for years. He had connections to politicians, business leaders, and globally recognized figures. When allegations against him became public, they raised uncomfortable questions, not just about him, but about the system that allowed him to operate for so long. Many people struggled to understand how someone with so many warning signs had avoided full accountability for years. Even after his arrest in 2019, the story did not end. In many ways, it became more complicated. His death in custody was officially ruled a suicide, but that explanation did not convince everyone. Across social media and public discussions, skepticism spread quickly. People questioned the circumstances. They questioned the failures. And most importantly, they questioned whether the full truth had ever been revealed. What made the case even more powerful was the list of people connected to Epstein. Figures like Prince Andrew became central to global discussions. Past associations involving Bill Clinton were also widely talked about. Even Donald Trump had, at different points, been socially linked to Epstein. It is important to understand that association does not automatically mean involvement in wrongdoing. But in the public eye, perception matters. And the perception was that this case was bigger than one individual. It suggested a network, something far more complex than a single story. By 2026, the case had started gaining attention again. Journalists revisited old details. Survivors spoke out once more. online communities began analyzing documents and raising new questions. Independent media and podcasts amplified the discussion. There was a growing feeling that the story was not finished, that something important was still missing. And as attention increased, so did public pressure. Then, suddenly, everything changed. The United States launched strikes on Iran. The scale of the event was massive. It was not just a local issue, it had global consequences. Within hours, media coverage shifted completely. The Epstein story, which had been gaining momentum, was pushed into the background. It did not disappear completely, but it was no longer the main focus. Instead, attention turned to the Middle East, to military strategy, and to the possibility of wider conflict. In today's world, attention is limited. People can only focus on so many things at once. When a major international crisis happens, it takes over the narrative. It becomes the center of discussion, pushing other stories aside. That is exactly what happened here. Conversations about Epstein slowed down. Headlines changed. The focus moved to Iran. This raises a difficult question. Was it simply coincidence, or did the timing play a role in how events were perceived? There is no simple answer. Military decisions are complex and based on intelligence, strategy, and national security concerns. But perception does not always depend on clear evidence. It depends on how events appear to the public, and to many people the timing felt significant. Just as one major story was building momentum, another, even bigger story took its place. This is not the first time something like this has happened. History shows that when large global events occur, domestic controversies often lose attention. Not forever, but temporarily. Focus shifts. Conversations change. It does not necessarily mean there is intent behind it, but it is a pattern that people recognize. Despite this shift, not everyone moved on. Journalists continued investigating. Advocates continued speaking. Survivors continued demanding answers. For them, this story is not just about headlines. It is about justice and accountability. It is about ensuring that power does not protect wrongdoing. Many believe that no matter how big the global crisis becomes, the Epstein story will return. Reactions to the Iran strike were mixed. In the United States, some people supported the decision, viewing it as necessary for national security. Others criticized it, raising concerns about escalation and timing. In the United Kingdom and Canada, leaders and analysts responded cautiously. There were concerns about regional stability and the potential for further conflict. Media coverage focused on what might happen next. At the center of all of this is trust. Trust in leadership, trust in institutions, and trust in whether the truth will eventually come out. When people feel that important questions remain unanswered, that trust begins to weaken. And once trust is weakened, every action is viewed with more skepticism. But attention does not disappear. It moves. And eventually, it comes back. The Iran conflict may dominate headlines now, but the Epstein story is not over. It remains unresolved, and unresolved stories have a way of returning. Often they come back stronger, with more attention and more pressure. So now we are left with two parallel realities: a world focused on geopolitical tension and a deeper story waiting beneath the surface. The question is not whether people will remember. The question is when. Because when attention returns, the demand for answers may be even stronger, the pressure may be even greater, and the consequences may be far more serious. In the end, this is not just about war. And it is not just about scandal. It is about power, accountability, and truth. And no matter how far attention shifts, the truth has a way of coming back.